Welcome to today's webinar, Microsoft Technology Trends for 2024. I'm Chloe Durbin, Managing Director of Webvine, and I'm very excited to be joined by James Dello today. Welcome, James.
Thank you, Chloe. Great to be here with you for this webinar.
Yeah. So James is our new head of delivery and product. I'm very excited that we're doing this together. So I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land and pay my respects to elders, both past, present, and emerging. So, as we always do, I want to tell you a bit about Webvine. For those of you that don't know us, Webvine is a digital transformation consultancy. We're based in hot, sticky Sydney today. And we help energize and transform organizations and their teams by using the incredible suite of tools on the Microsoft platform, which of course we're going to be diving into a bit more today. I'd also like to tell you about Ingeo. So Ingeo is our comprehensive intranet accelerator built on SharePoint. And it also includes, it's packed with features and functionality, and it also includes our fabulous AI bot. So let's jump into our webinar. We have handpicked some of the biggest and most relevant announcements from Microsoft Week that was held in November, and curated them for this webinar for you. So there's 5 key areas that we're going to cover, kicking off, of course, with Copilot. Then we'll dive into SharePoint Premium, new features about Teams, and then we'll talk about Microsoft Fabric and wrap it up with Planner and To-Do and Project. So that group of capabilities that now is called Microsoft Planner. There will be time at the end, I'm hoping, for Q&A, so please do get thinking about any questions that you have along the way and pop them in the Q&A box. So, as always, we do love to hear from you at the beginning of our webinars by conducting our poll. And so our question to you at the moment is, what's your biggest priority for 2024? So let's start our poll. So think about what your question what your priority might be. Is it implementing workplace AI? Is it shifting towards cloud solutions? Are security and data protection your top priority? Are you focused on accelerating the adoption of digital transformation and technology? Or are you strengthening infrastructure to support hybrid work? So I'd love to hear from you. Please put your responses in the poll. It's really interesting because so we got these questions actually from a particular CIO magazine, but I wanted to test this, so I put it into ChatGPT, and it came up with these 5 points as well. So consistently, these are the 5 priorities that organizations are thinking of. So thank you for those of you that have voted. So what we're seeing is quite an interesting result. Actually, 50% of you are focused on accelerating the adoption of digital technologies to drive productivity. So productivity is the biggest item of focus. And behind that, with 39%, is security and data protection. And the other areas don't really get too much of a mention. So that's really interesting, the bulk of attention on those 3rd and 4th points. Great. So thank you for that. So let's jump into our content. So Microsoft Ignite, of course, had a fantastic keynote from Satya Nadella. And, he really is talking about the crown jewel of Ignite being Copilot. And so here he's talking about that we're entering this very exciting new phase of AI where we're actually using the technology and getting into the details of producing, making, deployment, and safety. He says we're at a tipping point. And he says this is clearly at the age of co-pilots. So this is interesting. Copilot is now this broad term that Satya Nadella is using to coin generative AI in the Microsoft experience. So it's not just about M365 Copilot, it's Copilots, plural. And there may be over 150 of them. So yes, Microsoft 365 Copilot, that's the one that we've all been hearing about. But there's also Edge for Copilot, Copilots for GitHub, Copilot for SharePoint, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, he's talking about this age of Copilots, this age of generative AI experiences integrated with specific apps. So Microsoft commissioned a study by IDC, and it went to over 2,000 business leaders. And the idea was to uncover how they're actually using AI to drive value. And so there's some really interesting stats that came out of that. For every $1 companies invested in AI, they're realizing an average of $3.50 in return. So that's pretty compelling. And what I think is impressive as well is the average return on investment is within 14 months of deployment. So, quite a quick turnaround in actually seeing your investment return. And what this study also found was that the key AI use cases were across 4 key areas. So employee experience was the first one. So tailoring, because we're in this overwhelm of information, AI can really help with tailoring communication and providing insights. And the examples were, using M365 Copilot for content creation. The next one was customer engagement. And the use case was AI used in Dynamics 365 for call centers for real-time assistance and guided responses. So you can really understand how that would be useful. The third was internal business process. So the capability that AI has to dig deep and make connections across information that's spread very broadly across your organization. And they highlighted an example of cybersecurity to really identify bad actors and to move quickly in addressing that. And then, of course, with innovation and really seeing how AI in the hands of developers with, for example, Copilot for GitHub to accelerate innovation. So lots of compelling use cases there with all the Copilots. And I wanted to highlight something because this has become a bit of a confusion point, or a bit of a point of confusion for a lot of people around these two words. So Microsoft Copilot versus Copilot for Microsoft 365. So these are very different products. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about Microsoft Copilot because that was one of the big announcements in Ignite. So Microsoft Copilot is the ChatGPT-like AI capability, which sits on top of your browser. And it's available to everyone and it's free. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Copilot for M365 is, as you remember, the AI-powered digital assistant, and it's really deeply integrated into your Microsoft 365 apps, so in your tenant. And at the moment, it's only available to the enterprise, and it's quite a significant cost. So I just wanted to differentiate between those two terms because there has been a bit of confusion. So let's talk now more about Microsoft Copilot. So yes, goodbye Bing and hello Copilot. So Bing Chat for Enterprise has now become Microsoft Copilot. So think about this as your AI companion when you're working in your browser. So it understands all of your browser context and history, which is really beneficial. And what you do when you sign in to the browser using your Microsoft Work login, it also gives you commercial data protection. It's not going to be accessing your tenant data, but it will give you a lot of context to what you're browsing through. So, for example, any websites you're browsing, or even if you upload any PDFs into the browser, it can work through that. The great news is it's free, so you're not paying for it if you have the E3 or E5 license, and you do get that commercial protection, which is fantastic. And of course, as you'd expect from that sort of Copilot, that sort of ChatGPT type capability, it creates content, it creates images, and it can analyze information that you feed it through. So, this is available now and really ready for you to start playing around with and experiencing. Next is Copilot Studio, Microsoft for Copilot Studio. So this is really exciting because this is the ability to create your own custom Copilots, and it's really grounded in your business data. It's taking the generalist experience of a Copilot and making it into a very specific user case. And it does this by connecting lots of APIs that are available to your business systems, or by the 1,000+ Power Platform connectors. So for example, you can build a chatbot and then create and use it to generate answers for you. We're going to see a quick video, and I'm racing because we've got so much content to get through. Great. Onto Copilot dashboard. So this is included for your Copilot for Microsoft 365, and it's really the administration behind your Copilot investment. And the idea is this is going to assist you in showing the value proposition for your Copilots. So it'll show you who's using what, suggestions of who should be using what Copilots, how it's helping, what it's used for, what's the sentiment of users for the different components, and lots of metrics as well. And again, this is really to support adoption of Copilot and also in that change management piece. And it's included in Copilot for Microsoft 365 in preview at the moment, but soon to come, which will be very exciting. All right, that was rapid. Over to you, James, to talk about SharePoint Premium.
Thank you very much. I mean, obviously Copilot, and you can see how Chloe's gone through that. We've prioritized Copilot in this webinar. That stole the show. I mean, that was the headline from Microsoft this year at Ignite. However, SharePoint did get a mention, and particularly you may have heard of something called SharePoint Premium. There's a bit of a pattern, I think, from this year's Ignite that Chloe spent some time explaining the differences around Copilot. I feel we've got to do the same with SharePoint Premium as well, because Premium isn't a single feature that you just switch on. Neither is it a single feature that you just pay for and switch on. It's more of an umbrella for some additional existing and new features that Microsoft is providing as a premium add-on to your SharePoint experience, your standard SharePoint experience. And you can see we've got 3 buckets here: content experiences and solutions, content processing, and content governance. And I'll go through these in a little bit more detail. We'll go quite quickly, and you might want to come back and maybe talk to us about the bits you're particularly interested in later down the track, or go and do some more research, because they cover, as you see, 3 different sort of scenarios. So if we just talk about the content experiences and solutions, so there's a new integrated file viewer, and the big headline here is it has support for over 400 file types, and soon you'll be able to add ink, comment, mentions, tasks, and all those things to any supported file type, just like you do for Office documents today. So that's going to be a fantastic premium feature to see in SharePoint. And there's also a new business documents app in Teams, and that's going to let you review a full list of high value documents in a unified view. You'll get actionable insights like timely alerts for contracts that are expiring. So again, that's reinforcing both the idea that we've got the SharePoint content. Of course, your content in Teams lives in SharePoint, but it's bringing it to you in Teams where you do your work. So that's 2 really interesting content experiences and solutions there that are part of SharePoint Premium. The next ones here we're going to talk about is SharePoint e-signature. So this means that you're able to securely digitize document approval workflows. So if you're using a third-party solution, or maybe you're not even using e-signatures at the moment, SharePoint Premium is going to build that into the product. That's going to be generally available and rolling out throughout the first quarter of next year, but beginning with tenants in the US. So it might take a little while to filter out here to Australia. The other big change that's come through SharePoint Premium is around syntax, which you may have heard of from the past. They basically announced that all the services in syntax around document processing, content assembly, optical character recognition, image processing, and tagging that were under the syntax brand, they're all being rolled into SharePoint Premium. Now, this is kind of where it starts to get a little bit complicated with pricing. You know, some of these are pay-as-you-go services, and they'll start to be available. And then other services are going to be sort of made available in a different way. So yeah, some of these are not necessarily, again, a feature you're going to switch on, like this one for syntax. You're going to have to pay basically based on what you consume as you're using these particular services. The next one we have, and this one I think is really quite interesting. We've been doing lots of work with customers around document management and information management in recent times. And certainly a big issue comes up is around sharing of content. And you can see how data access governance is a new report that's going to sort of show you what is being shared out of Teams connected sites, for example. Just note it's not there for OneDrive just yet. So we have other ways we can sort of report on that, but certainly for SharePoint, this is going to be a really useful tool for working out what's being shared and by whom. The other piece we've got here is content event insights. So that allows you to find what Microsoft describes as interesting moments in the content lifecycle of a document. So high volume sharing, large download volumes. So it's sort of giving you a bit of I guess a canary in the coal mine if there's something going on with your content that's not part of your normal business operations. So these again very much about that sort of compliance view of your content and giving you some additional tools to manage some of those particular issues. And then we also have the final piece here, and this one again is another interesting additional service because when you think about it, the more we've adopted Microsoft 365 and SharePoint over time, the more content you're accumulating. The thing is, though, you may not actually want to delete that content, but neither is it content that you want to keep sort of in that normal BAU kind of store of SharePoint information. So what the archive is going to let you do is actually move content into an archive. Only IT will be able to access it, but you're going to be charged less for that archive content than you are for your live SharePoint content. So this is actually a really useful tool for people that are really trying to maintain and keep all their content in SharePoint and not shift it to other third-party services. So even though it's you're paying for that archive service at a lower cost, you may also find it's even lower than what you pay for third-party storage. So that's SharePoint Premium. As I said, it's a whole bundle of different services that have come together just to enhance that SharePoint experience. I'm now going to pivot into something different, which is around Teams. And the thing that really caught our attention this year is around immersive spaces and mesh. And again, we've got another little short video here because a picture or video paints 1,000 words. So we'll just let that run and you'll get a bit of a feel for what this new functionality in Teams is going to give you. Probably worth noting, of course, Copilot, of course, is there again. So Copilot is there. It's in it's in SharePoint, it's in there as its own right, and also certainly within Teams and some of these new experiences. So what have we got basically? So we've got immersive spaces. They're going to be generally available from January next year. So they're currently in preview with some customers. And basically it's going to let you transform 2D meetings into a 3D virtual experience with avatars, spatial audio, seat assignments, and audio zones. So you can have different conversations going on in that virtual space. So of course, this is all about making that hybrid work experience a bit closer to the real world. And we know that people are starting to want to come back to the real world, but we're in that hybrid world. This is going to try and bridge the gap between the physical and the virtual a little bit better. And the other one here we've got is around Mesh for Teams. This isn't a brand new announcement. They sort of started to talk about that last year. That's going to be generally available in January as well. And this is about creating custom spaces for events, training, tours, and product showcases. They're going to make it easier for hosts to interact with attendees, for example, and bring in the kinds of features that you're seeing in our webinar today, things like Q&A. That will be part of what Mesh for Teams is going to support. So again, both of these new features is about creating a more richer, more interactive 3D world for us to meet in, rather than just being stuck with audio and video. So that's quite cool features there in Teams. The other thing as well, just a few more kind of more useful little features for every day. So this is just about improving noise suppression, and I think Teams noise suppression actually is pretty good already, but I think this is going to make it even better. And then more opportunities now to decorate your background. So again, there's more AI here that will be able to sort of make really make your backgrounds pop and be a bit more interesting. So trying to make that, again, that virtual workplace just a bit more interesting, exciting to be part of. So that's what we're seeing in the world of Teams. I'm now going to, again, just jumping into a few last sort of areas that were announced around Ignite, and both are really interesting. This first one is actually more about data. I've got to admit, I've spent most of my life around the Microsoft space working more in what we call the unstructured space. But as you've seen with Copilot, and I think this is kind of what's driving this concept of what they're calling Microsoft Fabric, is they really need to bring all that data together so it's accessible to Copilot, and certainly Fabric works with Copilot. But even for you as a user, as maybe someone who's interested in data and Power BI reports, having a data warehouse, this is going to integrate all the different data functionality that Microsoft has, and we'll bring it together in something that's easier to use. So you can sort of have it in the cloud environment, and it will give you a unified data lake. So that's kind of a really, I think, a really fundamental capability that Microsoft needed to have, and that's what's coming. That's what's been announced at Ignite. And then finally, the last one I'm just going to touch on now, and this one, even though I feel it was kind of minor in the Ignite sort of agenda. As I said, Copilot really stole the show, and there's some interesting new features in SharePoint Premium. I'm really excited about this though, because the task management capabilities of Microsoft 365 have been very disjointed for quite some time. We've often talked about people not being sure what to use when or where, and Planner really was the one that I think caused a little bit of confusion, because you would be working in one area and those tasks just weren't available in a different tool. And this is what Microsoft is basically doing. It's not just a rebrand. They're actually working towards a more integrated task management experience. So firstly, it's about in early 2024, we're going to have a new Planner app in Teams. They're going to rename those apps as part of that consolidation. And then later in 2024, the web experience of the new Planner will be available. And that's when we're going to see things starting to come together. We don't have a lot of detail. We don't know what that's going to look like just yet. I did try and get Copilot in chat to generate a mock-up for me, but it kind of refused. So I got some very funky pictures come through. But so we'll have to wait until later in 2024 just to see what that new Planner experience is like. But I'm certainly really looking forward to it. And I think that brings us to the, there's just a few more points there. So it certainly would be simple, it would be flexible, scalable, and as I said, intelligent, because Copilot will be part of that new Planner experience as well. That sort of brings us to the end of this section of really what we've covered. Chloe, I might hand this back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, James. Yeah, so that was pretty rapid fire, and we've picked out, handpicked bits and pieces that we thought would be relevant to you. Certainly with Copilot, and then also introducing SharePoint Premium. Talked about a few new Teams features, because Teams always gets a bit of juice, doesn't it? And this Ignite was no different. And then jumped into a bit about the Microsoft Fabric, and of course the new planner, which I think will be really helpful and very practical. I'm certainly looking forward to using that. Just wanted to let you know, we've got a couple of questions, so we'll be able to answer those in a second. But we do have a new asset called Preparing for Microsoft 365 Copilot. So that is available. Please reach out to us if you want that. If you want that asset, and we're happy to send that along, because of course, a large bit of this is preparing and making sure that your data is ready for everyone to be able to access it. And so we've also got an offer of a documents workshop where we can do a bit more of a deep dive into you for that in terms of preparing. So conducting an audit, discussing your document management practice, and helping you to get a bit of a plan in place. So please reach out if any of those are of interest to you. And now we've got a couple of questions. So thank you. We've already, so David asked the question, can you pay to add Copilot if you're not subscribed to E3 or E5? So as I mentioned, the Bing Chat now becoming Microsoft Copilot, and answered you with that one, David. Yes, you can add Copilot, even if you don't have E3 or E5, but you won't have that commercial data protection feature, which is quite attractive for organizations now. So that's the only issue there.
I think it's probably worth adding as well that I think it's a known gap at the moment that Microsoft is targeting enterprise customers on E3, E5 and the larger ones. So we're expecting there to be some kind of announcement at some stage about what Copilot for, what it might look like, or what the offer might be for other subscribers.
Thank you. Now, Jess has a question for you, James. With SharePoint Premium, can you pay for just one of those services, or is it all or nothing?
No, that's actually spot on. So yeah, think of Premium as just an umbrella of the kind of let's call it the VIP menu. So when you purchase SharePoint online, we all get the same sort of baseline features, and you can add to it, either through your licensing, security features, for example. And that's what really Premium is doing. It's more of some options, but they do have different licensing or cost models. And some of them we don't know what they are just yet. So yes, but it won't be a case where you just pay per user and you get all the premium features. It'll be, you'll want to pick what you want to use, and you'll need to understand what the model is.
Right. Thank you. Had another question around Planner, and will Planner get more features? Don't know if you know about that, James.
Look, as I've been looking into what they're talking about, really, I think the key thing they're trying to do is consolidate the different task management tools. So how that will translate into new features, well, I think other than the fact that Copilot will be part of it, that's known and that's kind of obvious. So you'll be able to interact with it through Copilot, but we don't know much about new features. As I said, it's more about the fact that they're going to integrate that experience. And if you have tried to work across those different tools, they all have a slightly different idea of what a task is, for example. So they've got a bit of work to do to bring that together. So yeah, it's a bit of a wait and see at this stage.
And the final question, when will they lift the 300 minimum user for license for Microsoft 365 Copilot? That's the big question.
That's right. And that goes back to my earlier answer, is that we've got to wait and see. Because I mean, look, if you're in that sub 300 size, it is a huge extra cost. I think we can all agree on that. The only thing I'll say as well, though, is don't forget, though, even if you don't see the value of Copilot, even when they do release the pricing for sub 300 customers, all that capability is still going to be accessible through Azure and potentially custom solutions, or as we start to also see what capabilities we can utilize, we'll make use of them as well. So I think definitely wait and see. We've got to wait and see, but also don't just think that Copilot offer is the only way that you can take advantage of what Microsoft has. It's not going to be a one sort of a single option.
Fantastic. And good words to finish on, that there are really options, many options and possibilities, and a lot of exciting technology to take advantage of. So our biggest tip is to play around with the bits and pieces that you do have accessible to you, and start exploring what use cases there are for you, and of course start cleaning up your data, so that when you do make the big plunge into the investment, then you feel confident that what users are accessing is going to be okay. So thank you so much for your participation today. We really hope that that's been valuable to you. Please always feel free to reach out and ask us any follow-up questions. And certainly if you wanted the asset or to take advantage of that offer, we'd love to hear from you. And we're wishing you a really fantastic holiday time as we wrap up this year. So thank you so much, and looking forward to seeing you next year.
Thanks, everyone. It's been great being with you as well.